right. So Shane, how you doing, man?
Doing great. What about you, Shannon?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right, bro. You know, it's winter's coming to a close. That's what I'm most happy about.
Well,
You know.
in Florida, I'm really not feeling that. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just,
yeah,
I,
okay,
I
yeah.
really
You
haven't
wouldn't.
noticed much of a difference.
You wouldn't know. You wouldn't know. But hey, every season has its blessings, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. I know. I just wanted to start out here with a little. This might be humorous. I don't know. We'll see. Says Putin says Russia. This is from AP News, World News. Putin says Russia prefers Biden to Trump, but criticizes current U.S. policy. So President Vladimir Putin said that Russia would prefer to see U.S. President Joe Biden win a second term, describing him as more experienced and predictable than Donald Trump, even though Moscow strongly disagrees with the current administration's policies. So we heard a little bit about that, and there was some commentary, I guess, over the week. Trump gave his opinion on it, and I guess he said something like he took that as a compliment, and he was like, "Well, that's I don't see that as a bad thing." So then you ask yourself, okay, why, why would Putin prefer? Uh, why would he say that in public that he would prefer Biden over Trump, right? Because he's more predictable. And I think it says something about like he's from the old school administration. He's from the old school of doing things, right? So what do you think? What do you think that's all about?
So the first thing that comes to my mind is I don't remember exactly when it was. I was just looking it up,
Mm-hmm.
but this happened like back in 2019 or 2018,
Mm-hmm.
where or actually it may have been closer to like 2017, 2016. Anyway, Trump Trump threatened Putin and said, if you make a move on Ukraine during my administration,
Mm-hmm.
then I will nuke Moscow, and all those pretty little spires that you have in Moscow will all go away. That they'll all get burned up.
Right, the Onion
And
Dome, is that?
yes, yeah. The onion domes and the pretty little silver spires and gold spires and everything you have, they're all going to be gone.
Right,
And,
right.
and and then he also threatened President Xi too about Taiwan, and
Mm-hmm.
said that if he made a move on Taiwan during under his watch,
Mm-hmm.
then make no bones about it. I will nuke all of your pretty little pagodas and everything in Beijing. Nothing will be left standing. And
Right.
the thing is, from Putin's point of view, at least from what we're all familiar with,
Mm-hmm.
Biden has always kept it very, very formal and very polite and very mannerly and very, oh, please stop,
Mm-hmm.
please stop, please don't do that,
Mm-hmm.
please. But and then and we've made it crystal clear that we're not going to do anything beyond trafficking weapons and money into Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm not in favor of that. But
Yeah.
if you're looking at it from Putin's point of view, um, from our perspective, we think we're bleeding the Russians, but from
Mm-hmm.
Putin's point of view, he probably views it as he's bleeding NATO,
Right.
and making Russia safer in the long run.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I guess my initial thought to that, you know what I mean? This is, I don't think this is really that serious, but it is kind of comical or, you
Could
know,
also just be him being facetious too.
yeah, I mean, to me that was my initial thing there. It's like he's being facetious, he's being a little, like stirring the pot, you know what I mean? Because it, of course, why wouldn't you want a president that is sort of seen as um, you know, sorry to say this, but not altogether there, you know, um,
Yep.
and a little, you know, um, you know, he's an older man, and he seems to have a lot of issues as far as communication and cognition and things like that, And so why wouldn't you want somebody that is not that is why wouldn't you want somebody that's not that well, I'm trying to how to say this right. Why wouldn't you want somebody that's in that position leading the most powerful country in the world, you know, rather than somebody who's gonna stand up to you or be just as ironclad as you, you know, um, or who's willing to butt heads and actually mean it, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I think that but going back to I think before the Biden administration, when we think about what we were really setting ourselves up for as far as who our designated enemy was politically, on a global scale, it wasn't Russia. You know, uh, Russia wasn't really, Russia was kind of an afterthought. You know what I'm saying? Of course, they were always, I suppose, ever since the Soviet Union era, always seen as a potential enemy. But I think we began to see more of China as the potential enemy, and our real conflict really arising in the Pacific. You know, and that's something I think we had talked about this before, like you know, uh, you know, what was his name? What's his name? He worked for Trump's administration, like earlier in the
Good guy or bad guy?
I like to see him as a good guy. Um, um,
Um,
um,
was he
he's
a
got his own radio show now. He's got his own talk show website. Um, I can't believe I can't
oh,
remember his name.
he wears
Um,
glasses. He's like a stock
where's
guy.
guy? He,
Larry Kudlow.
no,
Is that him?
Irish Catholic, staunch Irish Catholic. You know, uh,
Um,
uh, you
not
know,
sure.
had his house raided, I think twice by by SWAT because somebody called in to saying that he falsely claiming that he had something in his house. What is his name, man? Well, I don't want to spend too much time on it. It's
Yeah.
okay. Anyways, but um, you know, it's just before the Biden administration, took over. Our attention was more, I think, on the Pacific, was more
Mhm.
our interests, were in that region. So I wonder what made us so focused on um, focused on Russia and Ukraine, and the say the Eastern Europe,
Well,
political.
I'll tell you exactly what I think it is. It's that we have there's a very very soft-handed class of people that are running the show up in DC that are, people call them the administrative class, managerial class, whatever, and they're in the Pentagon, they're in the White House,
Mm-hmm.
they're in the intelligence agencies and everything,
Mm-hmm.
and they they act like they've got a really really big stick, but what you're dealing with people with microscopic balls, like these are people that, you know they believe that the only way to make America stronger
Mm-hmm.
is to make sure that everyone else around America is weaker.
Mm-hmm. And by that
So,
you mean you mean just the regular, like the middle class or the
well well so
American citizens in general, right?
so I'm talking externally.
Okay.
Like I'm talking about great powers around the world. So we
Okay.
occupy Germany, right?
Hmm.
So Germany's not a threat. They're the natural continental hegemon of Central Europe. Germany is.
Hmm.
So we occupy them. So they're not a threat. They're not going to be starting a war that could disrupt our way of life. So
Right.
that's not a threat, and they won't be for the foreseeable future. Germany's
Right.
gone. which
Okay.
I support. I'm good with
Yeah.
that. The
You mentioned that many
Yeah,
times, right?
yeah, exactly. And then you've got then you've got the Russians
Uh,
who are not the Soviet Union. Russia has about half the population the Soviet Union did,
okay.
because a lot of the population was in Ukraine and all the break and all the Soviet republics, which were
Mhm.
not really republics. They were just little
Colonies.
autocratic states. Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
little autocratic colonies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you have China,
Hmm.
and what they and what their strategy is. They believe if they can get these other countries, if they control and trigger these other countries that they view as threats, in particular Russia and China,
Hmm.
if they can get them embroiled in a bloodbath of a war where
Hmm.
America's not where the most involved the United States is just in trafficking weapons and money to
Hmm.
the other side, and we make it into a proxy war,
Hmm.
then they view that as being the best case scenario for us, because then they can have the war, they can weaken their perceived enemy,
Hmm.
and they don't have to deal with the political consequences at home of the American people, of American soldiers coming home in body bags.
Hmm.
You know, but I think the problem is, because these people are might be really good at playing a game of Risk,
Hmm.
but they're not really good on the actual real world stage, because they don't understand the simple fact that countries like Russia and China, although they may not be as technologically advanced
Hmm.
as the United States is,
Hmm.
on the whole,
Hmm.
um, Russia and China, especially Russia, have substantial industrial capacity to be able to produce all kinds of armaments that
Right.
the United States has substantial capacity too, but we can't crank that stuff out in droves unless we go into a war footing economy.
Okay.
And
Okay. And
the thing is that elite very soft-handed class, they powder their hands and everything, and they put the lotion on their hands and everything to keep them nice and soft, and they want to look pretty and everything, that are up in
mhm,
DC, that are running everything.
mhm,
They do not want for the American people to perceive us to be involved in a conflict directly, or something
mhm,
that directly involves us, because then that means that the American people get very, very pissed off,
right.
and they end up sending people to Washington that end up firing that managerial class, and they don't want to have that happen.
Right.
So what they're going to do is they're going to try to provoke Russia into Ukraine to try to
Mhm,
weaken, from their point of view, to weaken Russia. They're going to try to provoke China to attack Taiwan to try
mhm,
to weaken China, because
mhm,
as far as they're concerned, because they don't value the dignity of the human person. They just view
mhm,
it as, it's a bloodbath. Yes, it's very sad, but it's just a bunch of Slavs that are dying in Ukraine
mhm.
and Russia. It's a bunch of Russians and Ukrainians
Right.
from their point of view. It's not Americans, so they're okay with that. Then
Right.
then they look over at China, and what they say is, well, if we can get the Chinese to attack Taiwan, a lot of people are going to die, but at least the American casualties will be very limited. And
Right.
and if you can get those countries to go to war and the United States is able to stay out, then
Mhm.
just by default, without America having to do much, it makes us more powerful because they become weaker.
Right. So basically, it's more like the American political class prefers proxy wars
Oh
over
yeah,
direct
yeah.
conflict, right? And so okay, so you have, because the way I see it is like, you have this three tier, this three, maybe it's not a three-tier system or something like that, but it's, like our three biggest enemies or something, right? So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
you have Russia, China, and Iran, right? And okay, you said Ukraine is sort of that's our proxy war with Russia. Taiwan is sort of our proxy conflict with China. I guess it's not sort of, like it actually is our
Oh,
proxy
it definitely is.
conflict with China, right? And in Russia. And then what would you say our sort of proxy conflict with Iran is? Would you say that's Israel Palestine, or
I would argue that our proxy that Iran is I would place Iran, and I could be wrong about this, but
Mhm.
I would place Iran as being the weakest out of all the regional powers in
Right.
the world.
Yeah. Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
they're not a weak country. Like, you
Hmm.
know, it would not be a cakewalk to attack them, and a war with them, I don't think we would end up winning.
Okay.
Um, but they, I think at this stage in the game, a
Hmm.
conflict that Iran is involved in,
Hmm.
at the very least, China and or Russia would be involved in it too.
Right. Okay.
You know?
Yeah, and they're all part of the BRICS. Uh,
Yes. Now, I'm not sure if Iran is or not.
I yeah, I don't. I don't know. I get yeah, that one I don't know. I know there have been a few a few um incoming members, as of I think as of this year, as of January. I think Ethiopia, Braz- Egypt, and Brazil and South Africa became new became new members of BRICS.
As of January 1st of this year, Iran is a member of BRICS.
Okay,
Now,
right,
yeah.
right. And
And
so,
and and you
yeah,
see the fundamental problem here is you look at the countries that are members of BRICS. You've got Saudi Arabia, you have Iran, you have South Africa, you have Russia, you have China, you have all these countries, and then you have a lot of the global South,
hmm
Brazil.
hmm
These are countries that at first, when in 2008 or 2009, when BRICS was first beginning, these were countries um, that were very, very raw materials heavy, very commodities heavy.
hmm
They produced a lot of like oil and coal and uranium and all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
But you know, as far as productive capacity goes, it was pretty much Russia was it. You
okay,
know, it was pretty much
okay,
Russia and China that had the industrial capacity. But what's been happening is Russia and China are very different places than they were in 2009.
hmm
They have a lot more capacity to produce stuff.
hmm
And our soft-handed leaders up in DC, just to demonstrate how much they've miscalculated the capacity of Russia in
hmm
particular. Is Do you remember when the war in the Ukraine began and Janet Yellen gave a speech
hmm
saying that the Russian economy would fully collapse within 12 days.
hmm
And
hmm
and then she said, "Oh, we missed at the end of the 12 days and nothing happened."
yeah,
She came out and said, "Oh, we miscalculated. It's going to be like 20 days." And
okay,
then at
yeah,
the 20th day, you didn't hear anything more about that. You
right,
didn't you didn't hear a thing about it anymore. And the reason is that the Russians have got a substantial capacity to produce finished goods out of the raw materials that they have.
right, because
And
they
and the
have
Chinese do too.
yeah, because and I remember you saying something like a couple years ago. We were talking about this, and you had said something about both Russia and China have a great amount of resources, like natural resources, that they
So
can.
so so China's very limited on their natural resources. So
Mhm,
so China's a net oil importer. They're a
mhm,
net food importer.
mhm, mhm,
China has a massive population, and
mhm.
they've got to import a lot of stuff. So
Okay.
so so China is kind of at the behest of whoever they're importing stuff from.
Right.
Now,
Okay.
fortunately for them, Russia's cup runneth over, man. I mean, Russia's loaded with natural resources and industrial capacity to
Right.
to finish goods.
Right.
So for Russia and China, the two of them are a match made in heaven. The only issue
Mhm.
between them historically has always been um, that they have issues with one another culturally.
Okay.
They have
Mhm.
issues with one another historically. They have squabbles over boundaries and stuff like that,
Right.
and just rivalries in general. But
Mhm.
because the enemy of my enemy is my friend,
Mhm.
the Biden administration has done something that really no one else has ever been able to do in history.
Right.
No Russian, no Chinese diplomat has ever been able to fuse an alliance between the two countries.
Yeah.
Joe Biden and Janet Yellen and all these soft-handed idiots up in DC, they have pushed Russia and China together in a military alliance.
Right. Right. And then they're on top of that, they're bringing in all these sort of well, they're bringing in all these other nations,
Mhm.
that we used to have some good relationships with. I mean, what one
Yeah.
case in point I can think of is Ethiopia. You know, we used to have a good relationship with Ethiopia, and that soured. Um, and I'm sure people will recall this. I think it was about 2 years ago that Ethiopia went through a domestic conflict.
Mhm.
An internal conflict where
Sadly.
yeah, where one party um, had, I guess, coalesced against the state, and that fell through. But there has been information coming out that the United States was heavily involved in supporting the uh, you know the well, the TPLF,
What is that? The
the
TPLF?
the Tigray People's Liberation Front. I want to say
Okay.
it's sort of the regional. It's a regional party, that governs the I guess the northern the northern region of Ethiopia. Um, and yeah, and so the U.S. was heavily involved in aiding that conflict, and then that fell through. Um, and they weren't successful, right? And now, Ethiopia has sort of moved into this direction of having a greater relationship with China than it previously did, you know. Um, and then of course, I don't know if you heard about this, but you know, I know you know who Elon Omar is,
Mhm.
uh, but she made comments about you know not so Ethiopia and this region called Somaliland, which is you know which is not recognized by the United Nations um, as a sovereign country,
Mhm.
right? It is which I think there are definitely geopolitical reasons for that, right? But Ethiopia was willing to recognize Somaliland as its own, like as an autonomous region, right? If Somaliland would allow Ethiopia to build a naval base in the region, right? So you have a lot of people in the U.S. who have been trying to uh, you know stir the pot to say, well, America should intervene in this conflict,
Of course.
or in this deal, right? Because of whatever reason, I really don't know the reason why they wouldn't want to why they wouldn't want Somaliland to be an autonomous region, right? I mean, they have their own currency, they have their own laws and everything. You know what I'm saying? And it seems to do much better than the rest of Somalia. You know,
Well,
but
sometimes though, to have a region that's a flashpoint and a
hmm
region that's in perpetual conflict
hmm
for an outside country like the United States that wants for there to be a little bit of chaos there,
hmm
so that everybody has to lean on the US instead of building themselves up and leaning on themselves.
hmm
It's actually a good thing for the United States, for the little soft-handed little little emasculated passive aggressive pat like uh people up in DC.
yeah,
What they want is for there to be a little region of chaos that everybody around there has to pour resources into putting bulwarks up to protect themselves from the chaos, and
hmm
then they want to try to intervene to try to fix things,
hmm
and they're allocating resources to that instead of being able to allocate resources to build themselves up.
right,
And
right,
and
right,
and
yeah,
two things about Ethiopia for people that don't know. One, Ethiopia is where the African Union is based, right?
hmm
And the
hmm
United States does not like the African Union. We do not like
okay, Yeah.
those little soft-handed people, they don't like the African Union because the African Union says that Africa is a very resource-rich continent, and it's
Right.
about time that they start acting in their own self-interest instead of following whatever the U.S. tells them to do.
Right.
And
This
the other thing is,
that was the I think that was the argument of Gaddafi, right?
yes, and what happened to him?
You know,
Well,
and yeah, I mean, we made him look like he was deranged and crazy and old, and you know,
and where are the headwaters of the Nile at?
I believe they're in Ethiopia.
Hmm.
Yeah,
It's interesting, isn't it? And
yeah,
and
they're in,
and wasn't Ethiopia talking about building a large dam project?
yes.
Wasn't Egypt upset about that?
They're still
Huh.
upset about it, and they're doing. You know, that's I'm glad you brought that up
That
because
is
that
fascinating. It's just funny how things just how things just happen to occur all at the same time.
yeah, that's a great point because you know what, man, Egypt actually chimed in on that whole conflict and said we will do everything to support Somalia, right, to prevent that whole agreement from happening, right. So that's I mean, yeah, that's a very see the thing is it's like by the time you start to put all this stuff together, a lot of this, sorry to say this, but a lot of this shit has already started. They've already started moving chess pieces before you can even catch up to what's really going on. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
you pay it, but you just pay attention and you see the buildup of things happening, and then they want to come out with, oh, breaking news, such and such has happened, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, why weren't you guys covering this stuff the lead up to a lot of these things that were taking place? It's because you were trying to cover up for the fact that, the United States has its hand in all these different regions, trying to, trying to, you know, maneuver things in their favor, and of course, I mean, you know, Egypt is, aren't they, don't, aren't they the, after, I want to say after Israel, they are the second biggest, like, we, as far as armament, right? Like military armament. Don't they get like the second largest package
yeah,
from the United States after after Israel?
yep,
Yeah.
uh,
So
yeah.
I mean,
And another interesting thing too, I wonder where all of the Palestinian refugees are going to get relocated.
mm, mm,
So, you know,
yeah. Yeah, I don't, I don't know.
this is just, I just wonder if there's an exchange that's going to happen here where, in exchange for us
Mhm,
continuing to promote strife in Ethiopia,
mhm,
if the Egyptians are going to, if the Egyptian government is going to end up welcoming in the resettlement of
mhm,
Palestinian refugees from the Gaza Strip.
mm, 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 mm. And what
Who knows?
and yeah, what would be the but what would be the benefit of doing that? Would it be to
Well, for us to expand to expand the total land mass of Israel,
mm, okay, okay.
you know,
Uh, well, yes,
which
okay, okay,
which
okay,
which beyond everything else,
yeah,
Israel is our permanent beachhead
mhm,
in the Middle East.
mhm, mhm,
You know,
mhm,
we now the Russians have a permanent beachhead in Syria. You know,
mhm, mhm.
um,
Right,
and
right,
that makes us very very angry.
yeah,
But that the Gaza Strip has a lot of has a lot of coastline attached to
mhm,
it.
mhm, mhm.
I'm sure that the United States and NATO are probably salivating at the opportunity to put a naval base there.
Okay, yeah,
You know,
Yeah, there's always some what do you call it? Military military end goal. It seems like,
Well, and you see, that's the thing is all jokes aside,
Mhm,
it's that these little soft-handed these little passive aggressive little soft-handed technocrats up in DC, this is the way that they view the world.
mhm,
They view human lives as being expendable,
mhm.
and they're willing to spill as much blood as they need to just so that they can expand a territory on the risk board that they view the planet as being.
Right,
It's
right.
disgusting.
Yeah, yeah,
And
true.
the thing, and I'm not even and I'm not even weighing in about the Israel Gaza thing. I'm just saying that's, I mean, more than likely that's one of the reasons that the Egyptian government will end up going along with whatever we tell them to do,
Hmm.
because the Egyptian government does not want Ethiopia to build that dam,
Right. Yeah, yeah,
and that dam would end up producing a lot of cheap hydroelectric power
yeah.
to the whole region down there.
Right, right.
That would change the way of life of so many people down in that part of Africa.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
But the Egyptians don't want it because it's not in the national interest of Egypt, because they, what, from the Egyptian perspective, they don't want the flow of the river to be throttled,
Right.
and when you rely so heavily on a river, you don't
Hmm.
want a foreign country controlling the river upstream.
Right. Yeah. Which I mean, for
it's
all.
it's reasonable, but
Yeah.
the thing is, what they ought to do is go and sit down with the Ethiopian government
Yeah.
and make a treaty and settle with them and say, look, this is what we don't want you to do.
Hmm.
Work out some kind of a deal where the Egyptian military maybe could come in
Yeah.
and just kind of monitor what the Ethiopians are doing, and
Uh-huh.
so that they can have an amicable thing. But because the United States is in the business of going in and picking the winners and picking the losers,
Yeah.
the Egyptians know the only way to win it is for them to cozy up to the US.
Mm. Okay. Okay. Right. So it's kind of a thing of, I'm telling dad.
Yeah. Or what they're doing is they're going to get dad to go bully a kid at school for them.
Right. Right.
They're getting dad to go and steal a kid's lunch money to give to them.
Mm.
You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm. Hmm. Now let's before we close, because I want to bring this back. I want to bring this literally. I want to bring this back home, right? To what do you think all this? Do you think all of our sort of our conflicts, proxy conflicts? Do you think there's any relation to what's going on at home, say with the border and the influx of immigrants, migrants, and
mm-hmm.
um, do you think there's any correlation with that or to that, or is this really just a separate issue that America that really doesn't want to tackle or deal with under this administration?
So that's a big question.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I think the reason that those technocrats in DC support an open border, and they're willing to fight to keep the border open,
Hmm.
and they're willing to fight to keep everything going, is because for them, from their point of view, these are people that measure their wealth in terms of the stock market, you know,
Okay. Hmm. Hmm.
and they measure their wealth in terms of like the value of assets. And so,
Okay. Hmm.
how people will say, like, okay, if you end up like doubling the money supply in a country, you end up
Hmm.
getting a lot of inflation, because then you have a lot more money, you have a lot more dollars chasing the same number of goods.
Hmm.
So that makes goods that are priced in dollars to increase in price, right? Because let's say that you've got $1 billion in cash circulating in an economy. then you
Mhm.
drop another $1 billion in cash from a helicopter, and you double the amount of the amount of money that's circulating in that economy.
Yeah.
Well, what'll end up happening as that money percolates through the economy, it'll end up roughly doubling the prices. Like that's a classic economics example. Now it doesn't work out exactly that way, but that's roughly the way it works. Now, instead of thinking about money and goods,
Mhm.
let's think about let's think about wages, and let's think about population, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
if you end up pouring a lot more people into the US economy, you end up flooding it with more and more and more people.
Mhm.
What are the consequences?
Well,
One, the
mhm.
non-asset owning classes in the country, who like most of us, who we have to work for a living,
Right.
like
The the the
that's what we
the
do.
the
Like
middle,
that's,
yeah, the middle class, right?
well,
And the
or
poor.
even people that are aspiring to be middle class.
Okay.
You know,
Right. Yeah.
we're not asset owners, so the only real asset we have is our labor that
Right.
we sell. You know,
Right. Right. Right.
and
Right.
so what happens when you have a bunch of new people that are flooding into the country?
Mhm.
More and more and more and more and more, what it will do is it will average down the
Mhm.
income of
Mhm.
people that are already here. It
Right.
averages down the income of everybody.
Right.
And because these people are coming from places where they're used to living in poverty,
Mhm.
and people in America are not used to living in poverty, even the most poor person in America
Mhm.
still lives better than where a lot of these people are coming from. And
Right.
these people are willing and these people are willing to work for less than minimum wage,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's another reason that these technocrats in DC love them so much, is that it creates a subclass of people that
Mhm.
have no legal recourse for
Mhm.
being taken advantage of,
Mhm.
that are off the books,
Yeah.
and they just get paid under the table for nothing. And then if they do go work above, or I guess you would call it like on the table or above the table, or whatever,
Mhm.
they're bidding down wages
Yeah. Yeah. And
while the cost of everything is increasing. And so
right.
what you're doing is you're making the difference of the asset owning class in America and the non-asset owning class, you're making that difference grow.
Mhm.
And it doesn't, I mean, these technocrats, they spend thousands of dollars on surveys and everything. All they
Mhm.
have to do is walk into a grocery store and ask any of us, how's it going?
Right.
So are you able to buy the same amount of stuff, more
Yeah.
stuff, or less stuff now than you were able to buy 4 years ago?
Right. Right.
You
And
know,
yeah, I mean,
and the
and
answer is less stuff.
right, right. The answer is less stuff, but and I also think that there's a sort of it's like they'll also do that. Their response to that will be is, well, you should be grateful for the
Mhm.
position you're in because there are people who are coming from other places who have way less than you, right? So you as a aspiring, someone who's aspiring to the middle class should be grateful for the fact that you know you're not you're not an immigrant kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's kind of like an excuse to
But you
be
see, that's where they're not
don't be
treating you
complacent.
like, but you see, that's where they're not treating you and I like fellow citizens.
Right, right.
They're treating us like they're the owners of the estate, and we're
Yeah,
the serfs,
right.
and we
Yeah,
should just be happy. And for the record, like, sir, in most cases, serfs paid a lower percentage in taxes than we do today.
right.
But obviously our way of life is a lot better in many cases.
Yeah.
But that's what their attitude is. They
Hmm.
just say, well, you need to be just shut up and be grateful,
Hmm.
peasants.
Yeah.
And they are, and the but you see, it's the thing is, they view the world as them and
Hmm.
you,
Hmm.
and you are lower than them.
Hmm. 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 Yeah.
And it makes them more. I guess there is kind of an analogy between what they're doing on the world stage with weakening who they perceive to be their external enemies by by causing them to weaken themselves.
mm, mm,
What they're doing is they perceive the lower classes to be their enemy, in the sense that they view us to be to just be unsophisticated buffoons,
mm,
you know,
mm.
just useless eaters and everything.
Yeah.
So what they figure is you will have less ability to become active in the system and cause them problems
Mm,
when your income gets averaged down, because you're having to bid against more people in the labor market.
yeah. 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 Now, what do you say to the whole argument that this is also the intention by the state to make American citizens really dependent on the state, right? They want them to be sort of a ward of the state or be on welfare,
Oh yeah, yeah.
just flat out, right? That they want to make you totally dependent, you know,
Yep.
on the state. And
They want
uh,
you in a position where you own nothing,
right,
where
yeah,
they own the assets and you don't.
right, right. Now, lastly, okay, I'm just gonna ask this: do you think that idea, that idea of being a ward of the state, being dependent on the state, the welfare state, do you think that the male and female divide as far as political affiliation has anything to do with that? That, sort of men really kind of want to pull away from that, right? They don't want to be a part
Yeah.
of that, right? And so you see a lot more men, just demographically, like they're leaning more towards the Republican Party, right? I mean, aside from the fact of like the social
Oh yeah.
you know problems, like, you know transgenderism, and teaching a lot of these things in schools that, you know obviously men don't want. They don't want their sons to be indoctrinated into these with these thoughts, and you know wanting to be girls, and stuff like that. But do you think, like, the whole idea of the welfare state, and being, dependent on the government, has anything to do with that sort of gender gap?
Well, men naturally want to protect and provide, and
Yeah.
men aren't perfect, right?
Right.
But
Right.
they naturally want to protect and provide, and women like to be taken care of, like
Mhm.
they, I'm not saying that women are incapable
Mhm.
of taking care of themselves, but they like to be taken care of, and
Yeah.
they deserve to be taken care of.
Yeah.
And um the problem is that uh that there can only be one provider and one protector.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think that the government sees men following their instinct as being dangerous to them.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah, they want to. They want to. They
You
want
know?
to. They want to. Yeah, I think what a lot of black people said in the '80s and in the '90s about the nanny state, or the government playing the husband role to the black woman, and
Mm,
kicking out the father, can really be sort of the primer for what we're starting to see, kind of you know uh what do you call it, the wave is spreading, you
yeah.
know beyond just sort of the black family, or the black community. And so people are starting to be aware of that. They say, hey man, that's that's coming over here now. We don't want, we didn't ask for that. You know what I'm saying? We're not cool with that. But I mean, yeah, I agree.
Well, and you know, in many, and you and I have talked about this a lot. You know,
Yeah.
I think that the black family's been the bellwether,
Right. Right.
you
That's
know,
what I. Yeah.
for the country, you
Yeah.
know. And there are a lot of reasons for that. I don't think we have time to go into it, but
Right. Right. Yeah.
the thing is, what happens to the black family and what happens to the black community tends to happen about like 30 years later to the white working class.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, it just ends up hitting the black community first,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and there are reasons for that,
Mm-hmm.
but it just, you know, they end up getting hit first,
Mm-hmm.
and then it ends up hitting everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if white people want to see where things are going,
Mm-hmm.
what they need to do is look and see what's happened to the black family,
Right.
you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
And the healing process is going to start with the black family
Right.
in America. That's where it's going to begin. That's where
Yeah.
it has to begin.
Amen. I'm with you on that, brother.
You know.
With you on that. I'm with you on that. All
um i
right.
i want to read something that I wrote on Twitter that triggered a couple of people.
Okay. Okay.
And then I'll shut up. The
It's
the
all good.
so I put on Twitter, and it triggered a couple of people on there.
Mm-hmm.
I said working class Americans can barely afford ground beef at the grocery store, while our government traffics billions to the Ukrainian government. Our system is broken. The connected class get their way as the working class suffers. And you know, that sums up exactly the way I feel about all this stuff. Is you take
Yeah.
care of your problems at home first.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, these people in DC, they could care less about you. They could care less about me.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, they view us as just being problems, you know.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I the last thing I would say is that I wish that the church, and I know we go back over this a lot,
Oh yeah.
but I wish the church would be more would do more to advocate for the family and the structure, within the family. Like, it's good to say that yes, a man and a woman should be together, and that it should be a man and a wife, a husband and a wife, and the children. But it's also a thing of um, men need something to actually invest in. They need to
Mhm.
feel like as if what they're doing is worth it.
Yeah.
Not to just say this is what you should do because it's right. It's like I understand it's right. I know that. But I can't get a job. I can't buy a house. I can't
Yeah.
buy a car. I can't get credit. You know, if I did a crime, I can't get a job. You understand what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like if you're going to if you're going to tell men to be men, don't just tell them to be men, but give them something to motivate them to be men. I'm not saying like, give them some kind of like an incentive, like, don't you want this money? Like, come over to the church and do this. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying there needs to be like real it needs to be seen, right?
Yeah.
They need to see that it actually works. And I think that's where men just can't, where men are having us struggling with coming to that place of, you know, um, being wanting to be a part of the church, regardless of it being orthodoxy or Protestant, that's not, that's a different, it's a different thing, right?
Yeah.
That's a different stop topic. But I think that if the church is, whatever denomination, if they're not giving men options to actually want to like to see the, the fruits of you know, the message in the gospel, you know, I just here's my thing. I think men are really we are instinctively Peters and doubting Thomases.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's you know, it's like unless I can touch it, I won't believe. Or you know, or we're straight to like Peter, like you know, I'll fight him. You know, let's you know,
Well,
let me
and
try my.
I think a lot of men naturally want to they want to implement a plan. You
Mm-hmm.
know, they
Yeah.
if and the only way for you to learn how to formulate your own plans are
Mm-hmm.
the only way for you to learn to formulate your own plan is to see other men that
Mm-hmm.
formulate plans.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, and then over
Mm-hmm.
time you're able to start to formulate your own plans.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the problem is for too long, the advice that the men have been given, it's been through the music industry and through Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
They've been told, you and I were talking about this yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
They've been told in to go and slap hoes and deal drugs
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in the music.
Mm-hmm.
They've been told in the movies and stuff and program to say, you let your feelings guide you.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
this is all stuff that doesn't work. I mean, this is all stuff that doesn't work. Like,
Yeah.
and what they do is they couch it in a bunch of feel good frou stuff,
Right.
but it's not real advice that's going to lead that man to better his life.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
A
Yeah.
couple a couple of things that I would say
Mm-hmm.
are: one, if you are a man who is in debt,
Mm-hmm.
this is the year of your jubilee. File for
Okay.
bankruptcy.
Mm.
The thing is, there's a big social stigma associated with it.
Yeah.
But guess what? Like, yeah, you know what? You were stupid to take out all the loans and stuff that you can't afford to pay back.
Mm-hmm.
But the creditor was also stupid to loan you that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that you wouldn't be able to afford to pay it back.
Mm-hmm.
So what you
Mm-hmm.
need to do is just admit I did something stupid,
Mm-hmm.
file for bankruptcy, move
Mm-hmm.
on. And the sooner you do it, the better.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can start rebuilding from the ground up.
Right. Right.
Don't
Right.
follow the advice of all these people like Dave Ramsey and all these people that are going to say, you cannot file for bankruptcy. Do not file for bankruptcy. You've got to, you ran up the $30,000 credit card debt,
Mm-hmm.
and it's at 30% interest.
Mm-hmm.
It's your responsibility to pay it back.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know what? Yeah, in a perfect world it would be,
Right.
but guess what? That creditor is charging you an interest rate that you'll never be able to pay off.
Right.
Never,
Right.
ever.
Right.
So
Right.
file for bankruptcy,
Yeah.
and then be very careful with the money that you spend from there.
Right.
Clip coupons.
Yeah.
Spend money very frugally. Don't go out to eat and everything,
Mm-hmm.
and bank cash. That's what you need to
Mm-hmm.
do. Even if the value of the dollar is dropping like 2 or 3% a year, or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
you're better off just stacking cash, because at least you've got something. At
Right.
least you've got something to start with.
Right.
But
Right.
don't follow the advice of all these idiots that are saying don't file for bankruptcy, because generally speaking, the people that are saying don't file for bankruptcy, that it's a taboo and all this stuff, they're people that are rich.
Right. Or probably filed for bankruptcy in the past and it's not telling nobody.
Well, no, actually, you know what? I would guess the people that have filed for bankruptcy
Mm-hmm.
would probably say, yes, my only regret is I didn't do it sooner.
Ah, okay.
You know,
Okay. Okay.
so
Okay.
that listen, that's the piece of advice I would give. Listen, this is the year of your jubilee.
Yeah.
Go go and file for bankruptcy, throw the chains off,
Mm-hmm.
and start over. Now, bankruptcy, it's going to kill your credit for about 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, if you're in a whole bunch of credit card debt because you went and blew a bunch of money, like at restaurants, the bar, and whatever,
Right.
then you probably have no business having access to credit for 5 years.
Yeah. I guess my only response to that would be, isn't it sad that there weren't men previously before them to guide them and tell them
Yeah.
not to do that. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
that's just. But that's my last word on that, bro.
And what these dirtbag credit card companies do is they say, "Oh, sign up for our card.
Right,
You're already pre-approved, and you'll get a free T-shirt,
right,
and stuff like that. We'll give you a free hat,
right, right.
or we'll give you a $5 statement credit,
Yeah,
on your first purchase or something." It's like, and they're not, these people, they don't want to give you a free T-shirt, they don't want to give you a free hat, they don't want to
right.
give you a statement credit. They
Yeah.
want to soak as much cash out of you as they can to
Hmm.
make you so that you can never be a threat to the system within the system, and so that you will never be able to provide for anybody,
Right, right.
you know
Yeah, yeah.
because they want to put the chains of debt on you, you
Hmm.
know so
Hmm.
that's the thing, is like, look, there is light at the end of the tunnel, especially for people that are in debt.
Hmm.
Don't listen to all these bozos that are saying, "Oh, don't file for bankruptcy." File for bankruptcy. Get out as soon as you can. And guess
Yeah.
what? This is the perfect time to do it, because with the interest rates being as high as they are, this is not the time to buy a house. This is
Hmm.
not the time to buy a car on credit. This is
Hmm.
not the time to utilize credit anywhere.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
And you're
yeah.
going to be waiting a while for the interest rates to go down again, if they do.
Right,
So might
right.
as well just bite the bullet now and just go ahead and do it.
Let's go ahead and do it.
The best time to cut the tumor out is now, like, do it.
Right, right. All right, brother. Well, that's
Okay.
that's great advice, man. So we
We covered a lot of ground.
we went international. We came back home and,
Yep.
made an economic plan, a
Yep.
financial
This
plan.
is the year of your Jubilee.
Right, 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 right. Okay. All right, brother. Great
All
talking to
right,
you, man.
Shannon.
We'll do it again.